Okay, so this is the part 2 to the part 1 of, I guess I can't say some of the title, but the video where I talk about being a targeted individual and wanting to take yourself out. So, here's some things that I totally left out that I forgot because I started going on a rant about other things. Going back to the mixed kid trauma, or the quote-unquote mixed kid trauma, because I don't really like the term mixed necessarily. I definitely don't like when people say things like mixed breed. That's just really weird, like you're talking about dogs or something. And I also don't really like the term biracial because the reality is that you can't actually be two races at one time. You would just be Negroid. And another thing about that is that, like, I get why people say that because you're commonly going to get told that you're quote-unquote not black or not black enough, and then of course the quote-unquote white people aren't going to accept, they're not going to accept you, and they're going to tell you that you're too quote-unquote black. And even if you've been made to feel like you're quote-unquote white, you're going to find out when you get cursed out and called a black nigger bee. But yeah, anywho, I get why people will like just say the whole kind of like I seen with a comment section situation with the angry biracial dude where somebody was like, yeah, you're not black. The usual thing that like people will do when you call them out on their issues, so then they'll just tell you, well, how are you going to talk on it because you're not quote unquote black, even though you would be Negroid, but all Negroids aren't necessarily black because Africans aren't even really quote unquote black. That label is made for certain people. But anyways, the angry biracial dude was like, I never said I was a black man, I said I'm biracial. But the thing is, all of this stuff, people are just really confused, and they're confusing each other because they're mad when on the community, the quote-unquote community, gets called out on their issues. But realistically, you can't be two races at one time. You can only be one quote-unquote race at a time. You can only just be Negroid. And another thing that I was going to go into with that is that, you know, when you don't fit the stereotypes, like if you have less of a southern accent, for example, you're going to get told that you're not quote-unquote black enough and that you're too quote-unquote black for white people, even if you're not quote-unquote mixed. Like, my relatives, not even just me, but even my relatives, like my dad, my sister, my brother, etc., etc., we've all always been told the whole we talk white, we act white thing. We've always been told that by people. And it's just about having less of a southern accent and not fitting like the stereotypes that people want you to fit. Especially if you're in like a hood type area. If you're in a hood type area where a lot of people are under the down low feminine thug persona programming, you're gonna get told that bullcrap all the time by people. And it's really weird though, because typically people don't even really fall into that type of conditioning till like after 3rd grade. It kind of reminds me of something that Pastor Stephen Darby talked about once when it comes to school. He said that the statistics show, or at least they did show at one point in time, that quote-unquote black boys perform the best in school up until 3rd grade, and then something happens. And I noticed that for some people, they act regular, they talk regular, they're not like trying to talk like a crying baby like NBA Youngboy or something for a while, but then by 3rd grade or after 3rd grade, then they're trying really, really hard to fit the stereotypes. Or if they're lucky enough, after 5th grade, then they're trying really hard to fit the stereotypes, and then their butts out, and then everything goes downhill from there. So yeah, they're okay, but then after 5th grade or 3rd grade, they're on market and their butt's for sale, and it's showing, and I guess they're waiting for you to slap them on the butt and let them know it's thick, and you can stack a table on it, and some cups. But yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot though, especially with that whole statistic thing, with that one Stephen Darby video about school. And the school system, as I talked about in the last video, it is like brainwashing to strip you from your spiritual gifts and your powers and stuff. But what point was I getting at? Oh yeah, so like, I don't even really feel like performing good in school means that you're necessarily not. Well, wait a minute. No, let me rephrase that because I'm screwing this up. I don't feel like doing bad in school is actually a bad thing. In fact, what you'll see a lot with these like billionaires and stuff, and these halfway told stories, but especially even for the ones that like weren't born in like these bloodline families, a lot of them didn't go to school, or they were homeschooled, or they dropped out of school. Because you have to have a different mindset. People who like believe in all the school stuff, or even just believe in the mainstream matrix narrative, they're going with the flow. They don't want to do anything that's going to be called weird or different, which is why they're not going to make it anyways. And they're going to be average. In fact, no, I remember some years ago, there was this one girl that made this video, I think on TikTok, maybe YouTube. I don't remember what her channel name was or even really what she looked like, but she made this video talking about how everybody wants to act special, but most people are just going to turn out to be average anyways, and a lot of people flipped out, but honestly, I get what she meant. Anyways, so, to get back to the point, with mixed kid trauma, I saw that, some videos of this one girl who's a street kid, and even, like, met someone else in Cali who had been kind of homeless off and on since 17, who's also quote-unquote mixed, and she had a similar story. She said she didn't learn how to do her hair till her, like, early 20s, and then, the street kid girl, in her video, she was talking about how, she started to learn how to do her hair once she became homeless, and she had nothing but time on her hands because she didn't have anywhere to go to get food. She was in the desert, etc., and she just had a whole bunch of donated bottles of conditioner and shampoo, and she learned how to finger coil her hair before she even knew that there was actually a name for it, which is finger coils. And she's talking about how like mixed kids often don't learn how to do their hair, but I think what a lot of people don't know, especially ones that would grow up in an area like she did in Cali, where like there aren't a lot of quote-unquote black people anyways, other than maybe Africans, which like I said before in some other video, like there's the Eritreans and the Ethiopians, and a lot of them are Negroes with straight hair, so like that's different, or just like different cultures. But like a lot of true Yasharel, and I can speak specifically for the ones in the US that aren't quote-unquote mixed, we don't learn how to do our hair either. And that's the point I was getting at. Because, like, people had this idea about, like, I don't know, kind of like that one very toxic lady that I knew I should have avoided since the first time I saw her, before I ever talked to her, that I mentioned in, like, a couple videos. I remember, like, she felt some type of way about me. She was jealous of me for a lot of different reasons, but one of them is that she feels like her life would have been better if she had a quote-unquote black mom. But honestly, you had a Jezebelic racist white mom, you would have probably had a Jezebelic black mom. Because, I mean, your dad's Jezebel, he was also a Chomo. Because he was 21, and the mom was 16 or something like that, or at least by the time she had the baby, she was 16, so yeah, there was that. But I feel like it kind of depends, though, but obviously they both had issues, and he had issues, he being the dad. I do feel like 17 and 20 is 17 and 21. It doesn't always have to be bad. A lot of things really depend. It's like America, as I've talked about before in many videos, we have this, like, not this pro-Gerontophile, not that. That's not what I meant to say. Or that's what I was about to say, but that's not what I was trying to say. I'm thinking about something else. What was it? What do I usually call it? Oh yeah, the whole minor thing. People have this weird mindset about high school and who's supposed to be in college and who's supposed to be in high school and who's high school age and who's not. So like, people just feel like, well, an 18-year-old shouldn't date a 17-year-old because maybe possibly the 18-year-old has graduated and the 17-year-old is still in school. Or a 17-year-old shouldn't date a 16-year-old because a 17-year-old may be in college already, depending on, like, their demographic and stuff. And I don't know when they graduate and their birthday maybe. But a 16-year-old may still be in school, but a 16-year-old who's in college shouldn't date another 16-year-old because that 16-year-old may be in high school. That's how Americans are. And, like, real actual grooming and predatory stuff continues because people feel like people have these weird mindsets around quote-unquote minors and also school because of, like, media conditioning, as I've talked about before, and, like, a lot of American media is about high school, even though a lot of the people playing high schoolers, especially back in the day, are, like, in their 30s and 40s. But it's just really weird how people are. So, like, date a 30-year-old at 17 and then that'll be okay, but don't date a 17-year-old at 19. If you're 20 dating a 17-year-old, then it has to be bad, but it doesn't really have to be. People just, everything, it doesn't have to be superficial, but commonly things are superficial, and people get with people for the wrong reasons, and that makes things weird when they don't have to be. But anyhow, what was I gonna say? But yeah, the dad was a chomo still, though, just like all the surrounding behaviors with it was not okay. And she just had this mindset that, like, if she had a black mom, things would have been better. But that's very unlikely to be true, especially with the type of dad she had. Maybe if her dad, like, wasn't what he was, and he wasn't also Jezebelic himself, he wouldn't have attracted another quote-unquote narcissist, people like to call it. But people really attract what they are regardless of what, like, we may want to tell ourselves. Like, I know that the reason that I've been in situations I've been in, like, especially that I have a video about this still. My old abusive friend, Addie. Like, that situation, it's really embarrassing. Like, looking back, it's been embarrassing. But that's, like, another good example of, like, how we attract what we are. But, what was I saying? But, yeah, like, she was just, I don't even know how else to put it. It just wouldn't have been any different, most likely. And then so many quote-unquote black women had the Jezebel spirit. It was just so unlikely to be any different, except the colors of people. So she was bound to still have deranged parents that did karate on each other and did karate on her. I will say, though, that maybe one of the different things that may have happened if she did have a quote-unquote black mom instead of a white mom is that due to, like, discriminatory stuff with, like, who wants to hire who, she maybe wouldn't have been wealthy at certain points in her life, or at least her parents wouldn't have been. If both of her parents were quote-unquote black, but other than that, I don't think there would have been a difference. And she probably still wouldn't have learned to do her hair. The street kid girl I mentioned who learned how to do her hair when she was homeless in the desert, she probably wouldn't have learned how to do her hair either, even if she did have a quote-unquote black mom. It probably would have been the same. Then the last thing that I forgot before I go into the other thing that I forgot to say in the last video is that when I was talking about the school system branch of the Cash for Kids system, I forgot to mention a lot of stuff because I didn't want to lose my train of thought. But what I was saying is that that's the first branch of the Cash for Kids system that everybody goes into. If you have abusive parents or no parents, it's going to probably go really, really bad. One, if you're anointed or prophetic, you're going to get treated like crap and everybody's going to treat you like crap. And you're not going to fit in. You're going to have people tell you you're weird. What was the other thing? Oh, yeah, like, my older enabler sister, she would often mention how, like, all of my siblings on my dad's side were always considered to be smart, which made them go through a lot of, like, racial things with teachers. And also a lot of teachers wouldn't like them and would feel like they're just being smart, or they're just, I don't know, trying to be like, what's that saying people say? I don't even remember what it is, but it reminds me of this post that my mom's boyfriend made some months ago, where he was like, people are always saying I have a smart mouth, but I've never met a dumb MFer with one. And I mean, he's not wrong, but anywho, not even really like that though, it just makes me think about that post, but more so they just were smart and they like knew a lot of the history was bullcrap, and teachers would get mad at them for that and for different things that were not things to be mad about. And so they would get in trouble and their teachers always hated them. Which actually reminds me of this one picture I took that I can edit in. It's actually from like one of my typed up PDF things about how to know if you were like a victim of the Cash for Kids system. I've been meaning to like put some on Gumroad so people can download them for free if anybody even wants to. But in those PDFs, I have this one screenshot from a comment section from a Nelson Scuman Deliverance Minister video, and the person was just talking about how like throughout their whole life they always felt like everybody hated them, and how like their teachers always hated them, the other students always hated them, and that's how it goes. And you're most likely going to end up in special ed as well, which is it goes two ways. One side of the umbrella is the quote-unquote bad black kids, and there's the bad behavior, quote-unquote. Then there's the quote-unquote retard side, or the slow one, as people call it. The other side of special ed, or the other side of the umbrella, is gate/gifted. Both of those you go through MK Ultra and trauma-based mind control, and you go through Ramco. Gate can lead to you being, eventually becoming a super soldier, or they'll try to push you into like politics or different things like that, and they'll try to push you into the Greek letter Freemason stuff, where you can like become a surgeon or whatever in the world. That depends. I have a playlist about that. Imagination Podcast got a new YouTube channel some months ago, probably longer ago than that at this point, but they re-uploaded their video about Gate, and that's a good video. There's plenty of videos out there, people who were the gifted kids, although they don't realize that they went through Ramco yet, but they talk about how they were the gifted kid, and how once they graduated from school, it really just like confused them about their identity, because throughout their whole time of being in school, they were the quote-unquote gifted kid, or they were always being told about how they were different, and they were better, and they were smarter than the other kids, which is really programming. But they get told that then once they graduate, it's like, okay, well now who am I, because school is my whole identity, which can even go back into the thing that I mention really often when it comes to ageism, that Americans feel like high school is everything. And it reminds me of like the whole situation that I have a playlist about with Billy from Soft White Underbelly, and also Santa Monica Close Up, and how he was talking about how he really wished that like somebody could adopt him and he could get his vital record so he could go to high school, because he didn't want to miss out on his high school years. And I mean, I'm not even gonna lie, I can totally understand that, even though I know I've just been getting bullied and beat up the whole time. I often wish sometimes still that like I could go, but I know it's not really worth it and it wouldn't go well whatsoever. But I get why people wouldn't want to miss out on it, because like, for one, when you're in certain situations, missing out on being in school means that you're most likely going to be around a lot of older people with issues, or who are very dangerous, risky people, maybe even chomos, or you're just going to be by yourself. And also, like, high school is made like, it's like I don't even know how else to put it, it's like what a lot of American media is based off of. People feel like high school is going to be like this thing that it probably isn't going to be, but I can definitely say that like with West Coast culture, especially with like the stereotypical skateboarding stuff, and like the very controversial movies like Kids, that a lot of people are talking about now. I think about the movie mid-90s, really any other stereotypical street kid or skateboarder movie, especially when it comes to the West Coast, like high school, I could definitely see how it could be a big thing with like the culture of the hippie culture, the doing different substances. Not that that's a good thing, but I could get why people would like want to make sure they don't miss out on the years that is, for whatever reason, stereotypical teenager stuff. But honestly, it's really not. Like, I would say that like the West Coast culture of like the hippie skateboarder stuff and like the drug stuff, which also happens pretty often in NY. It used to be a big thing in ATL, not much anymore, but that's really different from like a lot of places in the South where like people aren't into the hippie skateboard stuff. But like, I can get why people wouldn't want to miss out on it for a lot of reasons. But it definitely does make me think though. Like a lot of the people that I know aren't in school and haven't been. And they know that like, well, one of them knows for sure that like it would be very, very bad for her. Which honestly, I still don't understand why like nobody would just switch her school. But I'm not going to go into that situation. I've talked about that before. But it's so crazy though. But it's like, I could get why she's scared to go, but it's like, it's definitely something to do all day, though, other than like sitting in the house. Because so many people don't go outside. There's nothing to do outside in the areas that they live in. Like, they live in places that aren't even walkable, or people aren't allowed to go outside, which actually leads to a lot of vitamin and nutrient deficiencies and actually causes a lot of health issues. But people don't talk about that, but it's like, I don't know, I just feel like it's something to do at least. Even if you don't do good in school, it's just something to do. If you're not getting beat up and bullied, but typically if you're not to the prophetic, you will be. Dang, I went on this whole rant. Okay, back to the point. So, if you have no parents and you're like in a group home or the foster care system, if you even get to be in school, because being in CPS custody is being homeless and being trafficked, it's not really for sure that you're going to get to be in school if you're in CPS custody. You may not get to go at all, but if you do, especially depending on where you're at, you may not actually be allowed to be in real school. You may get put in these like Jim Crow type placements or these weird like alternative schools where you're going through brainwashing and being drugged and stuff. And the reason for that, or at least their excuse for it, is that when you get into foster care, they want to like test the waters with you. They want to see how bad your trauma symptoms are. And so while they're testing the waters with you, they put you in these weird abusive school placements where you go through a whole bunch of reactive abuse, where they actually make a case on you and actually create an issue that isn't there, which is how the human cash cow systems work. So like, for example, you'll be in a placement where like in this, like, okay, well this is based off of like something that happened with me. So alternative school, which is also a children's home, where the staff were always telling me and the other kids about how like this one orphan girl who lived there had committed and she jumped out the window at 12, maybe younger than that, and her name was Esperanza, and supposedly she also pulled all her teeth out with her bare hand, which is, it's very questionable though, because it's like, I think about this pretty often, but like, how do you pull all your teeth out with your bare hand unless her teeth were already rotten because she was being neglected anyways? But anywho, so yeah, Esperanza jumped out the window and the school was supposedly haunted. And so the staff would tell us about that. Most of the people there have been in other parts of the Cash for Kids system, like the mental health system branch, which is tied into all the branches of the human cash cow systems. So most of the people there were being drugged on drugs that actually caused them to have a lot of issues and to not be able to sit still and stuff, and to have like Tourette's and different things like that. I remember there was this one kid named Angel who wasn't on drugs, and he would be like, my mom said that I don't need any medicine because nothing's wrong with me, I'm just bad. But he had the usual situation of a stepdad who was always beating him up and choking him and stuff, which a lot of people actually were in that situation, or they just had two bad parents. Well, that is having two abusive parents, but they had two abusive like blood parents. Is that how that? I don't think that's how that's usually said. But anywho, so I remember he was always talking about how the dude wasn't his real dad and how the dude was mean to him and how that's why he hates black people, because they love to whoop and beat people up. And I mean, I don't blame him. He was Puerto Rican. A lot of people thought he was mixed, but actually the dude wasn't his real dad. And he would always talk about how he really wanted to live with his dad, but like a lot of people were jealous of him because his parents had money through whatever means. And he always had like Nikes and Jordans and stuff, because people think that stuff matters when it really doesn't. But a lot of people felt some type of way about him, and a lot of the staff felt some type of way because in their mind he's spoiled, which honestly I would really say that the parents who focus on material stuff and like buy their kids a lot of stuff are always the worst, most abusive people. More often than not, because typically they focus on like material things and like keeping up this image, like, and I notice a lot of people in the quote unquote black quote unquote community, they have this idea that like only we care about material things, but honestly I would say no, for one, I feel like a lot of melanated people just like fashion. Like throughout my years of traveling, like it's been 30 years or something, throughout my years of traveling, like I've noticed that a lot of Asian people, or well, let me boil it down. I noticed that Mexicans, Prt2.Su1c1d3, even Africans, Indians, a lot of us like fashionable stuff pretty much, and like even like people from Yemen and stuff, like fashionable stuff. I think it's about like people liking fashion. People try to make it about like poverty and slavery and stuff, as if everyone's like even a slave trade descendant, because that's not even true. But people make it about that, but it's like I don't think it's really about that as much as people think. But definitely people do want to like get material possessions to try to prove a point. But I feel like we just like fashion, or at least a lot of us do. And then also, like, people think there's like a difference in like the quote unquote white community, but really there's not. I would actually say that the difference between the melanated community, or especially like Prt2.Su1c1d3 and maybe a lot of the like quote unquote white Americans, is that a lot of us like fashionable stuff while really not having the money to afford it. But then a lot of them, I don't know, I really never see a lot of white people necessarily wear Nikes unless they really, really have money like that, or unless they really actually like them. But I will say that, like, they do have, like, a big thing with their community when it comes to, like, covering up the abuse and the CSA imagery that they make of their kids. And, like, I've literally been in places like in Santa Cruz, or people are, like, rich and they have these parties with middle schoolers and high schoolers where they tell their kids to invite their friends and different people at their school to their mansion to like have these sex parties or nudist parties, and they record CSA imagery of it and sell it, and a lot of things happen behind that, and just a lot of stuff like that. But as I always say, it's not actually true that melanated people abuse kids more. It's just that melanated people and southern people of really any ethnicity are very loud and proud about child abuse. But other than that, a lot of quote unquote white people try to like keep their family stuff a secret, and they try to like keep this this stereotypical good family, like 80s sitcom view of themselves. And they also do like materialism and like having money, obviously. But, they do like that too. And a lot of them will like base a lot of their life around that. Like, a lot of their kids will end up with like different types of personality disorders because their parents rather like focus on their tech career and making a lot of money, and they really wish they never had kids. And they focus more on like having a nice house or having a bigger house and a nice car and stuff, while their kids sit at home, or their kids are in boarding schools, which are part of the Cash for Kids system. And their kids get brainwashed in boarding schools and tortured and abused in boarding schools and military schools or different mental facilities, while their parents go make money. Like, I've literally heard plenty of stories of people that will go on these exotic vacations, and every time they go on a vacation to avoid taking their kids, they get all their kids put in a mental facility. And that's if they have medical insurance. But if they make too much money for medical insurance, they'll pay and they'll go on like a vacation for 30 days. They'll go to like a different state or whatever, and they'll throw their kid in a mental facility for those 30 days. And then when they come back home, they'll unenroll their kid. No, not unenroll. They'll sign their kid out of the mental facility, or to still keep getting some free time, they'll keep the kid locked up until whenever the place releases the kid. Which, one of the things about the mental health system is that you don't get a sentence. When you go into the mental health system, once you're in there, you're in there. It's not like when you go to jail or prison and you're told, okay, you're going to be here for 5 years. When you go in a mental facility, you don't know if you're going to get out. So, yeah. Like, due to the redlining and how, like, quote-unquote black people and quote-unquote white people are often not really around each other, and just, like, the brainwashing people are under, people think that they're way more different than they really truly are. But it's really all kind of the same. So, yeah. I don't know what to say about that, but did I ever finish the last thing about what was I talking about? The boarding school? But yeah, going back to the boarding school, I mean not the boarding school, the alternative school / children's home. So, pretty much the foster kids will go there, and if they're able to, like, avoid the reactive abuse, or they were, like, not targeted, then they would eventually be able to go to real school. But the thing about this, though, is that this puts you really, really behind, because these fake school placements, you don't learn any of the stuff that you're supposed to learn. So it's like you sit in a fake school placement for however many years, and then you go to real school, and then you, like, don't even know the basic stuff. Like, you go to real school, if you even get to go back ever, and don't end up just having to drop out or just getting locked up for the rest of your life. And then you, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, and then you just don't know how to do anything. Like, you don't know how to do the math, you don't know how to do the ELA work or whatever it's called. You've never had a gym class before, because these fake school placements typically don't have a gym class, or they don't even have a gym. Or maybe if you're in, like, a sped type placement, you're locked in a cage, or you're locked in a room or a building all day, a small trailer, so you're not even allowed to, like, do anything else. They typically don't have the funding or the staff to even have different classes. So, like, typically you're not going to really have a reading class, and you're not going to have a science class either. Science is definitely the one thing that they don't mind leaving out. So, like, you spend however many years in these fake school placements, and if you ever get to go to actual school, one, you're going to have anxiety most likely, because you're not used to being around a lot of people. Like, I remember when I was at this alternative school children's home thing, there wasn't that many people that were even in this school. In fact, it was known as the school where all the bad kids go, but really this is just a school where, like, either your parents put you or where you get put if you're, like, really... your abuse situation is just so bad you're not able to hide it, pretty much. Kind of like I say in my #1 message to abuse kids video, the best thing you could do is just not tell people, because everybody already knows anyways. But once you start telling people, they're going to get mad at you, they're going to tell you it's none of their business, and people are pretty much going to turn on you. And also, if you have, like, trauma symptoms that are very obvious, people are going to be mad at you for that as well. And they're going to feel like, it's no different from, like, when you're homeless and people feel like they should avoid eye contact with you because you may need something, or you may ask them for something, and they're going to feel guilty if they walk by you. So they just try to, like, avoid eye contact with you, and pretend that you're not there. It's the same thing. People act the same. They treat you the same in any bad situation that you're in. But they try to blame you for it and make it seem like it's about you, and they'll try to, like, be like, oh, it's just because you're a bum and you're being lazy. But really it's not, because people get treated the same when they're in their previous abuse situation before they have to run away or get kicked out. It's really all the same treatment. But yeah, it's like that pretty much. So, like, it's the place where all the abused people go, pretty much. And it's like, you know, people... I don't know what to say about it, to be pretty honest. I don't know what to say. I think, I don't know. I'm having flashbacks. That's the big thing about it. Of this one kid specifically. Like, the teacher, I remember the teacher... No, I don't remember anymore. Hold up. Wait a minute. Let me think about it. Oh, yeah. So, like, there was this one boy who was in the usual single mom situation. And... the teacher would yell at him and stuff. Not even really in a bad way, but, like, he would say that he knows that one of the boy's issues is that he doesn't have a dad. People say that, though, but realistically, the more common thing is that they don't have a dad, or their dad isn't allowed around, and their mom is also toxic and abusive, and she also typically brings around abusive guys. And one of the scary things about this is that a lot of these people end up unaliving themselves or going out and getting unalive because they're depressed and suicidal. Or they just end up getting driven crazy and locked up for the rest of their life and different things like that. Or they get, I think I already said they get unalived. I might have already said that. That's one of the scary things, though, looking back on a lot of these situations, is like, almost like the survivor's guilt, but most people will never really realize that they were trafficked and taken through trauma-based mind control. Most people will never want to admit that to themselves. And they'll never be able to really get out the situation or break free from all the gaslighting because they don't want to admit that what really happened is what happened. Most people rather say, I was just bad, or I was just mentally ill and I needed quote-unquote treatment. But this is what the systems do to you. And to summarize, you're going to be treated really, really badly, especially if you're anointed or prophetic. And most anointed or prophetic people end up unalived or being driven crazy or locked up. And, like, I know Tiffany Buckner talks about how, like, a lot of prophetic people end up in mental facilities because they lose the health of their mind. Honestly, I would say that most people end up in that because the demons and their parents and the other abusers around them can already sense that, like, they're gifted. And people around you typically start working really hard to drive you crazy from a young age. Like, I would say Tiffany Buckner was probably maybe born at a good time where, like, the Cash for Kids system wasn't that popular. And also maybe even had a family system that wouldn't even want to, like, lock their kid up in a mental facility and get labels put on them because it's too embarrassing for them. Especially with, like, the quote-unquote black community, although it's more common now because people know they can make money off of it as well. But it's like, it's just so easy to do. It's so easy to, like, get your kids locked up because they're your property and you can do whatever you want to do to your family. And what's the other thing? Oh yeah, the last thing about people wanting to unalive themselves. Having the story in your head that, having maladaptive daydreams in your head that when you take yourself out, everybody's going to feel bad and they're going to regret what they did to you and they're going to, like, feel sorry and they're going to be upset with themselves and they're going to miss you. All that stuff is bullcrap. One is manipulation, is emotional witchcraft that you're really more so doing on yourself because the people around you probably don't like you and don't give a crap about you, which is why you feel the way you do anyway. So, like, having this story going in your head that people are going to regret what they did to you and they're going to be crying at your grave or at your funeral saying, I'm so sorry and all of that, that's bull crap.